Hello, everyone. This is James McDaniels, host of the NBA and NASCAR Power Half Hour, and we have got another great show on tap for you guys today. And we've got so much to talk about today. We've got the NASCAR race at Auto Club Speedway. It was a killer finish, very awesome finish. Can't wait to talk about that race. Let's see. We've got the NBA season. All right, we're coming down to a close here. We've got only a few games left. And while we've already got some teams that have clinched their position in the playoffs, I don't think any team can be more feared right now than the Miami Heat. They have got one wicked win streak that has just been going on. They're actually flirting with the NBA record for most wins consecutively. So we'll talk about that. And even though this is not NBA or NASCAR related, we'll talk about the NCAA tournament, basketball tournament, a ton. And I think not only a ton, I think everyone's bracket, to say the least, has probably been destroyed at this point because there's been so many upsets. Some of the big favorites are already out. We've just got a bunch of Cinderellas that could be this year. So we'll talk about that, and then finally we'll talk about the newest development in the the Sacramento-Seattle saga over the Kings. It seems like the city of Sacramento has worked something out, and now it goes up for a vote. So I'll talk about the specifications of that during this broadcast. Now, the reason why I was not able to broadcast last week was because I was actually in a basketball tournament a few hours away from here. I didn't get back until late Sunday night, but I did pretty well. I did. Let's see. I think I did 11 points in one game and then 8 points in the other two. So I actually did pretty well. For the way I play, I pretty much just knock it down from downtown. That's pretty much the only thing I really like to do in basketball. But enough about me because I'm amateur. Let's go to the pros and see how these guys are doing in these sports. So let's go to the racing in NASCAR first. So Auto Club Speedway, really big, really wide course. Not a lot of wrecks that happen at this race course. Kyle Busch already, he had just a monster weekend. And he really kicked it off, in all honesty, with his victory in the Nationwide Series race. Really helped him in the Sunday race. In the Sprint Cup series. Let's go to a few of the wrecks first before I get down to final lap, which I'll probably talk about for quite a while because it was so dramatic. Few cautions that came out during the day that guys were having trouble with all day. Basically, they didn't have their greatest of days. One of them was Marcus Ambrose. Excuse me. He caused a caution on lap 170 when his left rear tire blew. Another guy that didn't have a very good day was Mark Martin. He during the race, he spun off turn 2, which brought up the 7th caution. And then one of the other big guys that also had trouble during the day was Clint Boyer. His engine exploded on lap 185, basically ruining his day. So that was some of the main guys that didn't really have their day today. But I think the talk of the day had to have been about Kyle Busch's pretty much domination of the entire day. But when it came down to it, in the last few laps or so, you've got Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin. They were also extremely fast all day, up there really in the top 10 pretty much all day. And I mean, Joey and Denny, they've been teammates. They're now basically rivals. At this point, after what happened, I think it was last week at Bristol, they had a fight, apparently, and tempers flared, and now they come back this week. They gave like a love tap or something to each other once or twice, but once it came down to the final lap, they had 199 laps in, 1 lap to go. It was Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin, who could have figured that were basically side by side going, racing each other for the win on the final lap. So they come down to turn 1, and Joey Logano is actually on the inside. Denny's on the outside. Denny gets a run off of because he's going on the high side. And when you're running the high side, I don't think it actually. I think there used to be where the guys would love to go down low and you could never pass from the high side. But as of late, I mean, in the last several years, the cars have learned to really been able to take the high line and really make it useful. And now the high lane's a lot more popular in NASCAR than the lower line in most cases at most tracks. But anyway, Denny Hamlin was using the high side, and you can get a run off the high side because you can stay in the throttle basically longer. You don't have to brake as long or hard, and you basically just keep that momentum running on the outside. Now, granted, during when you're going through the corner, because you have to take longer to go around the corner, the guy on the bottom is going to get ahead of you, but he's not going to be able to get that run coming off the corner as you do coming out, and therefore you're able to either keep the guy on the side of you or make a complete pass on him. But Denny was able to basically, when they were coming into the last lap, they were single file, and Denny was trying to get around him, but coming on the high side, Denny was able to finally really get around him, and not completely, but they were really side by side because Joey Logano actually came in and gave a little one of those love taps over to Denny Hamlin, and that caused Denny to just slow down just this tiniest a bit and slow down his momentum. They were almost exactly side by side coming into the last corner. And then what happened was is that, again, Denny Hamlin had a better advantage over Joey Logano because he was on the high side. And Joey Logano, I think, I think both redemption for what happened at Bristol and wanting to really win that race took him over. And he kind of slid up and he kind of bumped Denny Hamlin, and it caused both cars to spin, wreck, whatever you want to call it. And that gave Kyle Busch, who wasn't very far behind and who was one of the fastest cars the entire day, to come through and win the race. This victory for Kyle Busch is his 25th victory on the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series circuit. And it did break a 31 race drought for him in the series. So it was a very good day for him. Good weekend, winning both the Nationwide and the Sprint Cup Series races during this weekend. But actually, the fight there was fighting after the race, but it wasn't what you would expect. You would expect Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin probably get into it again and even harder this time, but it wasn't the case this time. Instead, Denny Hamlin was actually airlifted to the hospital because when he wrecked into the inside wall that kind of goes down. If you follow it goes right to pit road. He hit that thing head on, and when you hit that thing head on, you're going like 170 miles an hour. That is one hard hit. I don't care if you're going sideways or whatever, but it was a hard hit, and Denny Hamlin was airlifted to the hospital. I don't got a lot of information on that. Next week, obviously, we'll know basically what kind of problems he has, but right now, all we know is that Denny Hamlin was airlifted to the hospital. And the reason why he was actually airlifted was because that the traffic was too slow and they wanted to get him to the hospital as fast as possible. So that's why he was airlifted. As for the fight on pit road that happened afterwards, it was actually between Joey Logano and Tony Stewart. Now it's like, all right, well, why the heck is Tony Stewart fighting Logano if it was Logano and Denny Hamlin who should be mad at each other because they wrecked? Well, I bet Logano and Denny Hamlin are pretty upset at each other, but the reason Stewart was upset at Logano was because coming off a restart late in the race, Tony Stewart, I believe, was trying to get around. Yeah, Tony Stewart was trying to get around Joey Logano because apparently, I guess he got a lot more because Tony Stewart got more speed going into coming off the restart than Joey did, or something happened where Tony Stewart just had more speed than Logano heading into turn one, and Tony Stewart wanted to go below Logano and pass him because he was faster than him, but Logano just totally blocked him, and that made Tony Stewart really mad, and then that caused a confrontation on pit road. Some punches were thrown. Probably clear that both drivers, or at least one of them, is going to get fined this next week. We'll see how NASCAR does with this. I mean, we've seen these kind of fights before. I mean, Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin fought last week. At the ending of last season, we all remember Jeff Gordon and Clint Boyer really got into it that one. I mean, seriously, pit crew pretty much fighting in that one. It was ridiculous. But fighting in this sport isn't that great in terms of the drivers' images and stuff like that. But I think as a sport of a whole, it is good because it shows like the rough emotions of each driver and makes the fans a lot happier because it's something entertaining. And a lot of people say that the racing's too clean now, so having a fight or two every now and again like this is very good for the sport because it makes it not for the driver's perspective, it makes them look bad, but for the NASCAR as a whole, it makes it look good because it's entertaining and it shows emotion. And it goes back to when the racing was pretty much all like this every weekend, and people are saying that's the old NASCAR and that's what we love. So that's basically the rundown on the day. Marcus Ambrose, Mark Martin, and Clint Boyer all had a really tough day. Kyle Busch had a really good day and a really good weekend, winning both the Nationwide and the Sprint Cup Series. And then Denny Hamlin, Joe Logano wreck on the very last lap. Denny Hamlin airlifted to a hospital, and then Logano and Stewart get into a fight on pit road after Logano blocked Stewart on a restart when Stewart had pretty clear speed that he was a lot faster than Logano off the restart, and Logano wouldn't let him pass. So that's basically a sum up of the Auto Club Raceway weekend at Fontana. Obviously, we'll have a lot of fun when the cars go to Martinsville in a few weeks. So that ought to be fun. The short tracks always are awesome. So yeah, that's basically the update on NASCAR. And of course, last week, because I didn't get to see the race, I only heard like the main stuff. So last week also Casey Kane won at Bristol last week, in case you guys didn't know that Casey Kane won last week at Bristol. So that's NASCAR for you guys. Let's head over to the NBA, where the Miami Heat are putting on one of the most dominating performances I think you can ever see from a team. They've won 26. Yes, you heard me right. 26 games in a row. Yeah, 26 games in a row, and they're just hot. You just can't beat them right now. Miami may be hot, but I'll tell you another team that's also extremely hot, and that's Denver. The Denver Nuggets, they may not be as hot. They've only won 15 in a row compared to the 26 in a row that Miami has, but still, 15 games in a row. Denver's doing really good. They've already clinched their playoff spot, like Miami. So, both teams are doing really well, and they're going to be two teams you're really going to have to look out for. If they keep this streak up, I wouldn't be too surprised to see Denver and Miami battle it out for the NBA championship. But that's, of course, at the rate we're going, and, of course, an 82-game season is a lot different than a 7-game playoff series when it comes to playoff time and the playoff format. But one thing that's really big, that's really helping Miami here, is number one, the next team to Miami in terms of the Eastern Conference standings is New York. New York is 42-26, but they're 12.5 games back. So Miami has a lot of help because the other teams can't even come close to what they're doing in terms of the East. In the West, San Antonio continues to lead the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Clippers and all them favorites, and Denver. They're still beating everybody, and they may not like have a win streak, but their win streak right now is 4, but they may not have a very long win streak. But the point differential in their games, they average 8 more points than they average 8 more points scored than their opponent scores in a game. So they're doing really well. Their division, they're 12-2 in their own division. This is the Spurs I'm talking about here. They're 30-4 at home. Now that's using your home court advantage real well. And the road, of course, the road is where pretty much everybody has a terrible record. But in San Antonio, they have a different story. 23-12. It's like they never even left their home at all. Their conference, they're 30-12, very good. And when you have a record like that, you're just pretty much unstoppable. In their last 10, they're 8-2. But of course, that's like, San Antonio does really well in terms of playing as a whole. They may not have a winning streak, but when it comes to playing as a whole and getting those wins up there, they do it. Maybe not on a streak, but they do get them up there. Denver and Miami's an already very good team, and they're just putting a streak on, and they're just putting cushioning on themselves to show how they're just like going to kill it when it comes to playoff time. Now, of course, Miami won the championship not too long ago, so we'll see. We'll see how things happen. But if Miami stays this hot, I don't even know. I mean, some people are saying it's even possible that Miami may not even lose the rest of the season based on how their schedule is. And I mean, I really don't. I mean, I don't even know what the Miami schedule is. But when you got people saying they could possibly not lose for the rest of the season, they could win the rest of this season that they've got. It's just remarkable considering they've already won 26 straight. And, that's very close into the all-time record. I believe that is held by the Los Angeles Lakers. I believe it's 33 games in a row. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% positive that that is the correct all-time streak percentage, but I know it's very close if it's not 33 games in a row. So Miami doesn't have that much longer to go to tie that record, and pretty soon, if they keep on the track they will beat that record. And right now, nobody's in their way. So just take on full advantage for them. As for the other teams that have already clinched their spots in the playoffs in their respective divisions, New York has also clinched. Indiana Pacers have clinched their spots. And finally, the Brooklyn Nets have clinched their spot in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. In the West, same thing. San Antonio has clinched a playoff spot. Oklahoma City, Denver, and the Clippers have all clinched their spots in the Western playoffs. And in the East, pretty much all the teams have pretty much already been decided for in terms of the Eastern Conference playoffs. I mean, it's not a done deal yet, but very likely, unless something seriously miraculous happens, it appears that Atlanta, Chicago, Boston, and Milwaukee will be the last four teams to make the Eastern Conference playoffs, because Philadelphia right now currently is 7.5 games back in Milwaukee, and of course we only have maybe 16, 18, 19 games left to go in this season. We don't got that long left. So, or maybe not even that much. We actually have only about 13 to 14 games left for each team, 12 for some of them. And so we really don't have that much long left to go. So unless a complete miracle happens, Atlanta, Chicago, Boston, Milwaukee, in addition to New York, Indiana, Brooklyn, and of course Miami, will be your Eastern Conference teams in the playoffs. In the West, yikes, it's still as close as heck in this playoff race. I mean, you may still have the top four seeds that have already clinched their spots, and Memphis looks like they're about to clinch their spot within another game or two because their record is really close to the Clippers' record. Golden State, who knows? As long as they start, really winning a little bit more of their games, as long as they can keep, I say, about 500 or more percentage on their games, I think they'll go to the playoffs. But when it comes down to Houston, the Lakers, Utah, Dallas, Portland, they're all there. They are all there right now for the taking. If the Lakers falter, then I could see Utah, Dallas, or Portland seriously coming up and taking that final playoff spot. Because right now, you have Utah that is only a game and a half back of the Lakers, and the Lakers right now are the 8th seed in the West. As for Dallas and Portland, they're a little bit more back, but Dallas is only 2.5 games back. Portland's only 3 games back. So you got all these teams right now that really have a chance for the taking. If the Lakers falter like 2 or 3 games, and these other teams are going to take advantage of it, we have got probably one of the best playoff races we're going to see this season. Because, I mean, if the Lakers don't make it, that's going to be a huge story. It'll be a huge story if the Lakers don't make the playoffs, because I don't know when the last time the Lakers missed the playoffs. The Lakers are like a guarantee. And Dallas also is almost a guarantee. They've been in there pretty much every season since, I don't know when, 04, 05, 03, I don't know. It's just Dallas has been there pretty much every year somehow, some way. So a lot of history will be broken when this Western Conference stands at the end of 82 games. But as it is right now, the Lakers hold the 8th spot in the West. Houston's 2.5 games ahead of them. Then Golden State is 3.5 games ahead of the Lakers, and then after that, pretty much as soon as probably 1 or 2 more games are over, Memphis will clinch their spot, and that will pretty much settle the top 5. And then the last 3 spots are up for grabs but especially that last spot for the Lakers, that is going to be wild if the Lakers falter and the other teams can take advantage of it. Can't wait for that to happen. But that's the NBA, and the NBA, of course, is pro ball. But I think one of the more I think basketball. I think NBA is very interesting, but I also believe that the NCAA tournament is quite interesting because of all the upsets that can happen and all the big stories that could come out of it. I mean, just huge. This March Madness this year is absolutely insane, insane, if you can believe that. We've got some favorites that have already been knocked out of this year's contention for the national championship, and one of them was favorite Gonzaga. Gonzaga, they won their first round game against Southern, and they didn't win by much. They only won it by 6 points, 64-58. But then they went against Wichita State, and Gonzaga lost to Wichita State. Gonzaga is out. Gonzaga is out of the March Madness, and they were one of the teams that almost everybody felt was going to go to almost a championship level. They were really good. But but also a big story was Harvard. They upset New Mexico 68-62. I believe I actually heard somewhere I believe that Harvard had never won a March Madness game. And again, don't quote me on that, but I believe that is what I heard from ESPN or something like that. That this was Harvard's like very first win in a March Madness. I mean, Harvard. When you think of Harvard, you think of all the doctors and stuff. You never think of basketball or sports of any kind. But Harvard, they upset New Mexico and kind of ruined everybody's charts at that point, and went on to take on Arizona, who had beaten Belmont, but Arizona took Harvard quite easily, 74-51. As for the other big games, Iowa State made a small upset over Notre Dame. Ohio State got the easy win over Iona by a massive score of 95-70. But Ohio State almost did not escape Iowa State when those two played against each other. Ohio State just barely came out on top, 78-75. As for the other games that have been going on, another two other huge upsets. Wisconsin lost to Ole Miss 57-46. Kansas State, a huge favorite, they lost to LaSalle. LaSalle won 63-61, and now Ole Miss and LaSalle are currently playing to see who will take on Wichita State, which of course beat Gonzaga, one of the top favorites for the championship. On the east side, we have Butler. They took down Bucknell, and Marquette, they took down Davidson. But Marquette did beat Butler 74-72, very close match there. Illinois beat Colorado in the first round 57-49. Miami, Florida got the easy win over the Pacific 78-49. And then so now we've got Illinois and Miami, Florida dueling it out to see who will take on Marquette in the Eastern Division there. Also, we've got Syracuse. They beat Montana, and they now beat California. They will take on Indiana, who they had to beat Temple and they had to beat James Madison to get to where they are now. So it'll be Indiana and Syracuse in the next game. In the South, we've got a huge Cinderella story going on right now. We have got Florida Gulf Coast University, I believe is what FGCU stands for. But they are the number 15th seed in the South, and they beat Georgetown. Georgetown was another favorite to go and possibly, make a championship bid, and they beat them 78-68, and now Georgetown's out of it, and that was a huge upset, and that pretty much just destroyed everybody's brackets from being perfect because almost nobody would have selected that to happen. San Diego State, they beat Oklahoma 70-55 in the first round, but again, Florida Gulf Coast University made a huge upset again. They beat San Diego State 81-71 and are now to the Sweet. Now they're actually to the they're actually to the Sweet 16. Let's see. For Minnesota beat UCLA, and they took on Florida, which who beat Northwestern State, or I don't know, NW State, whatever college that is. But Florida did come out over Minnesota, 78-64. Michigan is advanced over VCU to take on Kansas. So that'd be interesting. Kansas University against Michigan. Finally, over in the Midwest Division, we have Louisville. They beat North Carolina A&T. They also beat out Colorado State, who in the first round, Colorado State beat Missouri. So now Louisville will take on another surprise team, Oregon. In my opinion, Oregon's not a huge surprise team, but they surprised me that they've gone farther than the top 32. I thought they were going to go to the top 32 and then get beat out by whoever got there, but not the case. Oregon upsets St. Louis 74-57 to advance and take on Louisville. St. Louis, by the way, did beat New Mexico State, but now, of course, since Oregon beat them, they're out of the tourney. And finally, we've got Memphis. They beat out St. Mary's just barely 54-52, but they fell to Michigan State by a very good margin, 70-48. Michigan State did beat out Valparaiso in the first round, 65-54. And so now Michigan State is waiting on the winner of Creighton and Duke. Creighton did beat Cincinnati in the first round, 67-63, and Duke beat out Albany 73-61. So now Creighton and Duke, whoever wins that game, will take on Michigan State to advance. So that's basically all of your updates. So basically, the breakdown is the Sweet 16 matchups will be number 6 ranked in the West. It will be number 6 ranked Arizona against number 2 ranked Ohio State University. And then on the other side of the West Division, the number 9th ranked Wichita State will take on the winner of Ole Miss and LaSalle. In the Midwest, it will be Michigan State University versus the winner of the Creighton and Duke game. And then Louisville will take on Oregon on the other part of the bracket in the Midwest. As for the South Division, we've got Kansas and Michigan be going at it, 1-4 ranks respectively. And then on the other side, we've got a big Florida matchup. Florida Gulf Coast University will try to continue their upset streak and take down Florida in the South. And then finally in the East, we have Indiana. They'll take on Syracuse. And then finally, Marquette will take on the winner of Illinois and Miami, Florida. So that is your NCAA tournament breakdown. A huge amount of upsets that occurred, and pretty much everybody's brackets destroyed. In fact, ESPN, their fantasy sports thing that they did, they had I think they said 8.15 million entries, and all those entries, none of them have remained perfect. They're all have been broken in some fashion or way. So you can tell that this year is totally madness. Tons of upsets. Few Cinderellas that could be going on here. It'll be quite interesting to see how the rest of this thing goes, because at the rate we're going here, we could see a Cinderella seriously walking away with the NCAA crown. So if you haven't been watching March Madness, watch it. It's been one of the best ones ever. Tons of upsets and a lot of bracket breakers. So that's basically your NCAA tournament breakdown. Lots of fun, and totally one of those years that we'll remember as being one of the biggest surprise years in recent March Madness history. Let's see. So that's basically all of our racing and basketball breakdown. Before I close up the show, I realize I'm about near end now, but and a quick update on the Sacramento-Seattle saga over the Kings. Seattle, of course, as we all know, has made that deal with the Maloofs, and now it goes before the NBA Board of Governors. Kevin Johnson and his team submitted a deal, but it wasn't high enough, according to David Stern, to be considered. So now, Mayor Kevin Johnson has worked with Ron Burkle, Mark Mastrov, and a brand new guy also came in, another guy with big money. I can't really pronounce his name that easily, so I'm not even going to try. But 3 very rich people now are on the Kings project, and now an agreement has been made between all of them on how they're going to do this. So it's a $448 million project now that would put an arena on K Street and basically revitalize all downtown at the downtown Plaza site. So it basically would be the same as kind of last year's deal in a way, as parking revenue is going to be a big thing in it. The city itself will basically pay its way mostly through that, but they'll also sell out some lots to people and stuff like that. Merkel, Mastrov, and then they'll basically run the team, and the financial stuff is kind of hard to explain. So we'll get kind of a response from the NBA as soon as we can, but on what they believe of all this information that in a way kind of seems a little difficult to understand. But another part of the deal, it was a non-binding deal, which is not the best thing. I mean, I wish it was not. I wish it was binding, so then it would be a sealed deal. I believe the reason they're keeping it non-binding is because if the Kings don't stay, then I think the deal is just going to fall apart. Because then there's really no point in building another arena, because then there's not a main thing to come in, and not a main team or attraction to come in and basically perform in it. Of course, you could build it and have all the other big names come in, but the main reason they're doing all this is to save the Kings, and I understand why they're probably saying it's non-binding, because they're waiting for it to say, Kings come here, you stay, and then we'll make it binding. But another thing that I really like about this deal is that if it all goes through and the Kings do stay, it guarantees that the Kings will stay 35 years. So definitely a very long stretch time, shows a lot of financial stability. We'll see what will happen. Big dates for the Kings coming up. April 3rd, there will be a Board of Governors meeting, and that they will discuss, and that means especially to basically balance the offers and see which one's better, kind of give a briefing, and kind of give time to make their decisions. And then April 18th and 19th, the big day comes when we will find out whether the Seattle deal goes through, and if it doesn't, if the Moose will sell the team to the city of Sacramento. So a lot of new stuff in the saga going on. Basically, $448 million deal has been reached between the three big investors and Mayor Kevin Johnson. Now it will go up for a vote, and then they'll send it off to the NBA, and we'll see what happens from there. Next big date, pretty much after this, is basically April 3rd, when the owners will get a briefing on the plans, and they'll go over it, and they'll have time to think about what they want to do when that mid-April meeting comes, and that big decision becomes their responsibility to figure out. So that pretty much wraps up this show, this edition of the NBA and NASCAR Power Half Hour. I will see you guys next week for more NASCAR action. I actually don't think they race next week. Of course, if they do, I'll be all over it. But I think because they advertised Martinsville as being 2 weeks from now, I think there's not a NASCAR race next week. So we'll see. But I'll look at the schedule. But if there is NASCAR action or fines, I will definitely go over that. Latest on March Madness, we'll definitely go over. If any records have been broken in the NBA, I'll sure to go over those. And if any new developments come on the King Saga, I'll talk about that. And of course, if any other weird NBA news comes along, I will also cover that in my next broadcast. So for now, this has been James McDaniels, and this has been the NBA and NASCAR Power Half Hour. And I'm signing off. I will see you guys next week. And until then, I hope you have a great rest of the week.